What if the deepest peace you've ever known was waiting for you in stories told 25 centuries ago? Stories not of heroes and battles, but of ordinary people discovering extraordinary wisdom. The kind of wisdom that transforms suffering into freedom, confusion into clarity, and restlessness into rest. Welcome to Buddhist Insight's Journey, a sanctuary where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets the modern need for peace. Before we begin, I invite you to join our global Sangha. In the comments below, share where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's beautiful to see our community, spanning continents and time zones, all gathered here in this moment of peace. As you settle in, know that if you drift into sleep, that is exactly right. These stories will continue their work even as you rest. Or if you remain awake, simply listening in the darkness, that too is perfect. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to achieve. This is your time for rest, for peace, for simply being. Let your body find its comfort. Let your breath slow and deepen. Let the day release its hold on you. Let us begin. Nanda, the brother's desire. There was once a young man named Nanda who lived in the city of Kapilavastu. He was the Buddha's half-brother born to the same father but a different mother. Nanda was known throughout the city for his remarkable beauty and his devotion to his wife Janapada Kalyani, who was considered the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. Nanda had everything a man could want. He lived in a palace, wore fine clothes, and spent his days in comfort and pleasure. His wife adored him, and he adored her in return. Every morning he would wake to find her beside him, and every evening they would walk together in the palace gardens, lost in each other's company. But the Buddha saw something in his brother that others did not see. He saw a man whose heart was capable of great things, trapped in a golden cage of his own making. One day, the Buddha came to Nanda's palace to receive alms. This was the custom. Monks would go from house to house, and families would offer food as a gesture of generosity and respect. Nanda came out to greet his brother holding a bowl of rice. As Nanda poured the rice into the Buddha's bowl, the Buddha began to walk away before Nanda had finished. Nanda followed, still pouring, not wanting to be disrespectful. The Buddha walked slowly through the streets, and Nanda followed and followed until they reached the monastery at the edge of the city. Brother, Nanda said, "I have followed you all this way. May I return home now?" The Buddha looked at him with eyes full of compassion. "Nanda, why don't you stay here for a while? Become a monk, even if just for a short time. See what this life has to offer." Nanda felt trapped. How could he refuse his own brother, especially one as revered as the Buddha? Out of respect and obligation, he agreed, though his heart remained at home with his beautiful wife. The other monks shaved Nanda's head and gave him the simple robes of a monk. But Nanda was miserable. Every day he thought only of Janapada Kalyani. He imagined her waiting for him, wondered if she missed him as much as he missed her. During meditation, instead of watching his breath, he pictured her face. During work periods, he counted the days until he could return home. The other monks noticed. "Nanda sits with us, but his mind is elsewhere," they whispered. "He wears the robes, but his heart has not left the palace." One morning, Nanda made a decision. He would leave. He would sneak away before dawn and return to his wife. He began to watch the monastery gates, learning the patterns of when monks came and went, planning his escape. But the Buddha knew his brother's heart. He knew that Nanda needed to see something before he could truly choose his path. Nanda. The Buddha said one day, "Come walk with me." They walked together into the forest, and as they walked, something extraordinary happened. The Buddha, through his spiritual powers, transported them to a heavenly realm. Suddenly, Nanda found himself in a place of unimaginable beauty. There were gardens more magnificent than any on-earth palaces that made his own look like a peasant's hut, and celestial beings of radiant beauty. Nanda's eyes grew wide. He saw 500 celestial nymphs, each one more beautiful than the last, dancing and singing in a palace of gold and jewels. Brother Nanda asked, "Who are these beings? Who lives in this palace?" "Adipray, these nymphs are waiting for someone," the Buddha replied. "They are waiting for a monk named Nanda who practices virtue and meditation. When he dies, he will be reborn here and they will be his companions." Nanda's heart leaped. All thoughts of his wife vanished. If this was what awaited him for being a monk, then he would be the best monk who ever lived. He would meditate day and night. He would follow every rule perfectly. They returned to the monastery, and Nanda's behavior changed completely. He sat in meditation for hours without moving. He studied the teachings with intense focus. He performed every duty with meticulous care. The other monks were amazed at his transformation, but the Buddha watched and said nothing. He knew that Nanda's motivation was still rooted in desire, just a different kind of desire. Months passed. Nanda's meditation grew deeper, and one day something shifted. In the stillness of his practice, he began to see clearly. He saw that his desire for the celestial nymphs was no different from his desire for his wife. He saw that he was still chasing pleasure, still running after something outside himself, still believing that happiness could be found in external beauty and sensual delight. He remembered the Buddha's teaching. All conditioned things are impermanent. What arises will pass away. What is born will die. Even the heavenly realms are not permanent. Nanda sat with this truth. He saw that even those celestial beings would one day fade. Even that golden palace would crumble. Even the pleasure of heaven would end. And then what would he be reborn again, chasing after another pleasure, another desire, another beautiful form? For the first time, Nanda felt something he had never felt before. A deep weariness with the endless cycle of wanting. He saw how desire had controlled his entire life, pulling him this way and that, never letting him rest, never letting him be truly free. That evening, Nanda went to the Buddha. He bowed deeply and said, "Brother, I understand now. I have been like a dog chasing its own tail, running in circles, thinking the next thing will finally make me happy. But happiness is not found in getting what we want. It's found in being free from wanting itself." The Buddha smiled a smile of deep warmth and recognition. "Nanda, you have seen the truth. Desire is like drinking salt water. It never quenches thirst, only increases it. True peace comes not from fulfilling desires, but from understanding their nature and letting them go." "But how do I let go?" Nanda asked. "The desires still arise. I still think of my wife. I still remember the celestial nymphs." "You don't fight the desires," the Buddha said gently. "You watch them. You see them arise like waves in the ocean, and you see them pass away. You don't grab onto them, and you don't push them away. You simply observe with compassion for yourself, With understanding that this is the nature of the mind, Nanda practiced this teaching. When desire arose, he didn't judge himself. He didn't think, "I'm a bad monk for having these thoughts." Instead, he watched with gentle curiosity. Ah, there is desire. There is the wanting mind. How interesting. And in that watching, something remarkable happened. The desires began to lose their power. They still arose, but they no longer controlled him. One day, Nanda realized he hadn't thought of his wife in weeks. Not because he forced himself not to think of her, but because his mind had naturally settled into a deeper peace. He realized he hadn't fantasized about the celestial nymphs in months. The images that once consumed him had faded like morning mist. He went to the Buddha again. "Brother, I am free, not because I have conquered desire through force, but because I have understood it. I see now that what I was really seeking all along was not my wife, not the celestial nymphs, not any external thing. I was seeking peace, and I was looking for it in all the wrong places." The Buddha placed his hand on Nanda's shoulder. This is true compassion. Nanda, compassion for yourself. You have stopped fighting with your own mind. You have stopped demanding that you be different from what you are. And in that acceptance, in that understanding, you have found freedom. Nanda became one of the Buddha's most dedicated disciples. He taught others about the nature of desire, not from a place of judgment, but from deep understanding. When monks came to him struggling with their own desires, he would say, "I know this struggle. I lived in a palace with the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. I saw the celestial realms and their unimaginable pleasures. And I learned that none of it brings lasting peace. Peace is here now, in this breath, in this moment, when we stop chasing and start simply being." And so, Nanda discovered what many of us spend our whole lives searching for, that the peace we seek is not found in getting what we want, but in understanding the nature of wanting itself. His journey from palace to monastery, from desire to freedom, became a teaching for all who heard it. Nanda discovered what many of us forget, that desire, no matter how refined, still binds us. Whether we chase worldly pleasures or heavenly rewards, we remain trapped in the cycle of wanting. True freedom comes not from fulfilling desires, but from understanding their nature. The Buddha taught, craving is the root of suffering. Not just craving for bad things, but all craving, even craving for good things, even craving for spiritual experiences. The mind creates suffering through tanha, craving. We believe happiness lies in getting what we want, so we chase endlessly. First worldly pleasures, then refined desires, then even spiritual attainments. But each fulfillment brings only temporary satisfaction, followed by new wanting. The Buddha saw that the problem isn't the objects we desire, but the mechanism of desiring itself. When we understand how craving arises and passes, we stop being controlled by it. Perhaps we're like Nanda, thinking the next achievement, relationship, or experience will finally bring lasting peace. We get the promotion, but soon want the next one. We find love, but worry about losing it. We achieve a meditation milestone, but crave deeper experiences. The cycle continues because we haven't understood that peace isn't found in getting what we want, but in transforming our relationship with wanting itself. As you rest tonight, notice any desires that arise for comfort, for sleep, for tomorrow, to be different. Don't judge them. Simply observe. Ah, there is wanting. Watch how desires come and go like waves. In that gentle watching, discover the freedom. Nanda found not freedom from having desires, but freedom from being controlled by them. Upali, the barber's dignity. In the city of Kapilavastu, there lived a barber named Upali. Every morning he would wake before dawn, gather his scissors and razors, and walk to the homes of the wealthy families who employed him. He cut hair-trimmed beards and performed his work with quiet skill. Upali was good at his job. His hands were steady, his cuts were precise, and he never spoke unless spoken to. This was important because Upali belonged to the lowest caste. In the society of his time, a barber was considered unclean, unworthy of respect, someone who served but was never served. When Upali walked through the streets, people of higher castes would step aside, careful not to let his shadow fall upon them. When he entered a home, he used the back entrance. When he was paid, the coins were placed on the ground, so no one had to touch his hand. This was simply how things were, and Upali had learned not to question it. But Upali had a secret. In the evenings after his work was done, he would sometimes walk past the grove where the Buddha taught. He would stand at the edge of the crowd far back, where people like him belonged, and listen. He couldn't hear every word, but he heard enough. He heard the Buddha speak of suffering and the end of suffering. He heard teachings about compassion, about the equality of all beings, about how a person's worth was not determined by their birth, but by their actions. These teachings stirred something in Upali's heart, a hope he barely dared to acknowledge. One day, a group of young men from the Shakya clan came to Upali's small shop. These were princes and nobles, the highest caste, and Upali bowed low as they entered. Among them was Anuruddha Ānanda and several others. They were the Buddha's relatives, young men of privilege and power. Upali, Anuruddha said, "We have decided to become monks. We're going to renounce our wealth and follow the Buddha's path. But first, we need you to shave our heads." Upali's hands trembled slightly as he prepared his razor. These were men who could have him beaten for the smallest mistake, and now they sat before him, asking him to perform the most intimate act of their transformation. As he worked, the young men talked among themselves. "We'll give away our fine clothes," one said. "We'll carry nothing but a bowl and robes," said another. They spoke with excitement, with the enthusiasm of those embarking on a great adventure. When Upali finished, the young men stood and removed their expensive jewelry, their silk garments, their symbols of status and wealth. They piled everything in the corner of the shop: gold necklaces, precious rings, embroidered robes worth more than Upali would earn in a lifetime. "Upali," Anuruddha said, "we're leaving these things behind. They mean nothing to us now. You may have them." Then they walked out, heading toward the monastery, leaving Upali alone with a fortune in gold and silk. Upali stood there staring at the pile of riches. His first thought was joy. He was wealthy now. He could live comfortably for years. But then another thought came, quieter but more persistent. If these noble men, born into every advantage, are willing to give up everything to follow the Buddha's teaching, what does that say about the teaching itself? And what does it say about me, that I would take their cast-offs and return to my small life? He looked at his scissors and razors, the tools of his trade. He looked at the pile of wealth, and then he looked at his own hands, the hands of a barber considered unclean by society, but hands that had just performed a sacred act, preparing these men for their spiritual journey. Upali made a decision. He gathered up the jewelry and fine clothes, locked his shop, and began walking toward the monastery. His heart pounded. He, a barber, was going to the place where monks gathered. He, an untouchable, was going to ask to join the Buddha's Sangha. When he arrived at the grove, he saw the young Shakya nobles standing before the Buddha. They had just arrived themselves, still wearing their regular clothes, about to request ordination. Upali hung back, waiting, watching. But the Buddha saw him. The Buddha always saw everyone. Upali. The Buddha called out, "Come forward." The crowd parted, and Upali walked through, feeling every eye upon him. He knelt before the Buddha and placed the bundle of jewelry and clothes on the ground. "Lord," Upali said, his voice barely above a whisper, "these men gave me their possessions, but I don't want them. I want what they want. I want to follow your teaching, but I am just a barber. I am no one. I have no right to ask." The Buddha's eyes were full of warmth. "Upali, in my teaching, there is no high or low. There is no pure or impure based on birth. A person's worth is determined by their actions, their intentions, their heart. You are welcome here." Then the Buddha did something that shocked everyone present. He turned to his attendant and said, "Ordain Upali first before these noble men." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Shakya princes looked at each other in surprise. To be ordained first was a mark of seniority in the monastic community. Whoever was ordained first would be considered senior to those ordained after, regardless of their background. But Lord," one of the princes said hesitantly, "Upali is a barber. We are Shakyas. Surely." The Buddha raised his hand gently. "This is precisely why Upali must be ordained first. You young men have been proud all your lives. You have been bowed to served honored. Now you must learn humility. You must learn to bow to Upali, to call him venerable elder, to recognize that in the dharma, the last shall be first." And so, Upali was ordained. He was given the robes, the bowl, the new name. And when the Shakya princes were ordained after him, they bowed to Upali, their former barber, and called him elder brother. Upali could barely believe it. He who had spent his life being told he was unworthy was now senior to princes. He who had entered homes through back doors was now honored by those who once wouldn't let his shadow touch them. But the Buddha wasn't finished teaching. Over the following weeks, Upali discovered that his new status brought new challenges. Some of the other monks, especially those from high castes, struggled with having to show respect to a former barber. They would bow to him as required, but their faces showed their discomfort. One day, Upali came to the Buddha troubled. "Lord, I see that my presence causes difficulty for some of the monks. Perhaps it would be better if I left. I don't want to be a source of discord." The Buddha looked at him with great tenderness. "Upali, do you know why I ordained you first? Not to punish the proud, though that is part of it. I ordained you first because you have something many of these noble-born monks lack. You have humility born of genuine understanding. You know what it means to suffer. You know what it means to be looked down upon. This knowing has made your heart soft, and a soft heart is the beginning of wisdom." But Lord Upali said, "I still feel like a barber. Inside, I still feel unworthy. Anthai." And that feeling, the Buddha said, is also something to watch. Society told you that you are unworthy because of your birth. Now I tell you that you are worthy because of your heart. But true freedom comes when you realize that you are neither worthy nor unworthy. You simply are. The labels, whether they come from society or from me, are just labels. Your true nature is beyond all labels. Upali sat with this teaching. He began to watch his own mind to see how he still carried the old beliefs about himself. When someone bowed to him, he would feel a flash of unworthiness. They shouldn't bow to me. When someone showed him respect, he would think, they're just doing this because the Buddha said so. He saw how deeply the old conditioning ran. But he also began to see something else. He saw that the princes who had been ordained after him were struggling too. They had been taught all their lives that they were superior, and now they had to bow to a barber. Their pride was being challenged just as his unworthiness was being challenged. One evening, Anuruddha came to Upali. "Elder brother," he said, and Upali could hear that the title came more easily now. "I want to apologize. When I first had to bow to you, I did it because the Buddha commanded it, but my heart was full of resistance. I thought, this is wrong. This goes against the natural order. But I've been watching my mind, and I see now that the natural order was just something I was taught. There is no natural order. There is only the order we create with our beliefs." Upali felt tears come to his eyes. "Brother," he said, "I too have been watching my mind. I see how I still believe deep down that I am less than you. Even though the Buddha says otherwise, even though I wear these robes, part of me still thinks I should be using the back entrance." They sat together in silence. Two men from opposite ends of society, both discovering that they were trapped by the same thing: the belief in separation, the belief that some people are inherently better or worse than others. The Buddha had been listening from nearby. He came and sat with them. "This is the heart of the teaching," he said softly. "All suffering comes from the belief in a separate self, and from that belief comes all the divisions, high and low, pure and impure, worthy and unworthy. When you see through this belief, when you recognize that all beings share the same fundamental nature, then compassion arises naturally. Not compassion as pity, but compassion as recognition. I am you, you are me, we are not separate." Upali practiced with this understanding. He became known for his precise knowledge of the monastic rules, his fairness in settling disputes, and his deep compassion for all monks, regardless of their background. When monks from high castes came to him with their struggles, he understood. When monks from low castes came to him with their pain, he understood. He had walked both paths, the path of being looked down upon and the path of being honored. And he had learned that both were traps if you believed in them. Years later, when the Buddha was asked who among his disciples was most skilled in understanding the monastic discipline, he named Upali. The barber had become the keeper of the rules, not because he followed them rigidly, but because he understood their purpose: to create a community where all beings could practice together, free from the divisions of the outside world. Upali learned what the Buddha came to teach, that our worth is not determined by our birth, our occupation, or what others think of us. Our true nature is beyond all labels and judgments. A barber and a prince both carry the same seed of wisdom. The Buddha taught, by birth one is not an outcast. By birth one is not a Brahmin. By action one is an outcast. By action one is a Brahmin. The mind creates identity through mana conceit, the belief that I am better than, I am worse than, or I am equal to others. Society reinforces these illusions through caste, class, and status. We internalize these labels until we believe they define us. But the Buddha saw that all such distinctions are sankhara mental formations, conditioned, constructed, not ultimately real. Our true nature, Buddha nature, exists prior to all labels, untouched by social conditioning. Perhaps we carry beliefs about ourselves given to us by others: not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy. Or perhaps we've been told we're special, superior, more deserving. Both beliefs are chains. When we meet someone society deems beneath us, do we see a human being or a label? When we feel inferior, are we seeing truth or believing a story? Notice any thoughts about your worth. I'm not enough, or I'm better than. See them as just thoughts, not truths. Beneath all labels, what remains? Simply awareness, simply presence. Rest in that space tonight, where you are neither worthy nor unworthy, just perfectly, completely yourself. Sunita, the Scavenger's light. In the city of Rajagaha, there lived a man named Sunita. Every morning before dawn, while the city still slept, Sunita would walk through the streets with his cart, collecting the waste that people left outside their doors. This was his work, and it had been his father's work, and his grandfather's work before that. Sunita was an outcast born into the lowest possible station. He was a scavenger, someone who handled refuse and filth. In the rigid social order of his time, there was no one beneath him. When he walked through the streets, people would turn away. Mothers would pull their children inside. Even other low-caste workers would avoid him. He had learned to move quietly, to make himself small, to finish his work and disappear before the city woke up. He had learned not to look people in the eye, not to speak unless absolutely necessary, not to hope for anything beyond his daily survival. But Sunita had a heart that still felt, still wondered, still longed for something he couldn't name. Sometimes in the early morning darkness, he would pause in his work and look up at the stars. He would think, is this all there is? Is this all I am, a man who carries away what others discard? One morning, as Sunita pushed his cart through a narrow alley, he heard voices. A group of monks was walking through the city on their arms, round their bowls, held gently before them, their steps slow and mindful. At the front of the group walked the Buddha. Sunita's first instinct was to hide. He pressed himself against the wall, hoping they wouldn't notice him. But the alley was narrow and there was nowhere to go. The monks would have to pass right by him. He stood there, frozen, his cart full of waste, his clothes stained and torn, his hands dirty from his work. He had never been so close to holy men before. He had never been so ashamed of what he was. The Buddha approached, and Sunita lowered his eyes, waiting for the monks to pass. But they didn't pass. The footsteps stopped. Sunita could feel someone standing in front of him. "Ah, friend," a voice said, gentle and warm. "What is your name?" Sunita's heart pounded. No one called him friend. No one asked his name. Slowly, he raised his eyes and found himself looking into the face of the Buddha. "I am Sunita, Lord," he whispered. "I am a scavenger. Please don't let me pollute you. I will move aside." But the Buddha didn't move. "Sunita, what makes you think you could pollute me? Lord, I am unclean. I handle filth. I am the lowest of the low." The Buddha's eyes held such kindness that Sunita felt something crack open in his chest. "Sunita, tell me what makes a person clean or unclean. Is it the work they do, or is it the intentions in their heart?" Sunita didn't know how to answer. No one had ever asked him such a question. No one had ever suggested that his heart mattered more than his occupation. "I don't know, Lord," he said honestly. "RSA. A person is not made impure by their work," the Buddha said. "A person is made impure by greed, by hatred, by delusion. I have known kings who were filthy inside, and I have known beggars who were pure as mountain streams. Tell me, Sunita, when you do your work, what is in your heart?" Sunita thought about this. "I try to do my work well, Lord. I try not to bother anyone. I try to be quick and quiet so people don't have to see me." "And do you wish harm to anyone?" "No, Lord, never." "Do you take what is not given to you?" "No, Lord. I only take what people have thrown away." "Do you lie or speak harshly?" "I barely speak at all, Lord." The Buddha smiled. "Then you are already practicing virtue, Sunita. You are already walking the path, even though no one has taught you. Your heart is clean, even if your hands are dirty." Sunita felt tears beginning to form. No one had ever spoken to him this way. No one had ever seen anything good in him. "Lord," he said, his voice breaking, "I have always wondered what it would be like to live a spiritual life. But people like me, we are not allowed in temples. We are not allowed to study. We are not even allowed to listen to teachings. I have accepted this. But sometimes in the early morning I wonder what it would be like to seek truth, to practice dharma, to be free from suffering." "And what stops you?" the Buddha asked. "I am a scavenger, Lord. I am nothing." The Buddha reached out and placed his hand on Sunita's shoulder. The touch was so unexpected, so completely against all social rules, that Sunita gasped. Holy men did not touch outcasts. Holy men did not even let the shadow of an outcast fall upon them. Upali. Sunita. The Buddha said, "In my Sangha, there are no outcasts. There are only people who wish to end suffering their own and others. Would you like to join us? Would you like to become a monk?" Sunita couldn't speak. He looked at the Buddha, then at the other monks standing behind him. Some of them looked surprised, even uncomfortable, but the Buddha's face held only invitation, only welcome. But Lord Sunita finally managed, "I have nothing to offer. I have no education, no merit from past lives, no good qualities. I am ignorant and low-born." "You have the most important quality," the Buddha said. "You have a sincere heart. You have the desire to understand, to grow, to be free. This is enough. This is everything." And so, Sunita left his cart in the alley. He followed the Buddha back to the monastery, and there in front of the assembled monks he was ordained. The Buddha himself performed the ceremony, speaking the words that transformed Sunita from an outcast into a bhikkhu, a monk, a seeker of truth. But the transformation was not easy. Some of the monks, especially those from high castes, struggled with Sunita's presence. They had given up wealth and status to join the Sangha, but they had not given up their prejudices. They would avoid sitting near him. They would whisper among themselves. They would find excuses not to share duties with him. Sunita noticed, of course. How could he not? But he had spent his whole life being avoided, being whispered about. He knew how to bear it. What was harder to bear was his own mind. Even though he wore the robes, even though the Buddha had ordained him part of him, still believed he was unworthy. One day, he went to the Buddha troubled. "Lord, I am trying to meditate, but my mind is full of thoughts. I think, you are just a scavenger. You don't belong here. These other monks are better than you. you will never understand the Dharma. The Buddha listened carefully. Sunita, these thoughts, where do they come from? From me, Lord, from my own mind. Are they true? Sunita paused. Society says they are true. I did not ask what society says. I asked if they are true. When you look directly at your own mind, at your own awareness, do you find a scavenger there? Do you find high caste or low caste? Do you find worthy or unworthy? Sunita closed his eyes and looked inward. He looked past the thoughts, past the labels, past the stories he had been told about himself. And what he found was simply awareness itself, clear, open, not high or low, not clean or dirty, just present. No, Lord, he said softly. I find only awareness. I find only this moment. This is your true nature, the Buddha said. Everything else, scavenger, monk, worthy, unworthy, these are just concepts. They are real in the world of social convention, but they are not ultimately real. Your true nature was never touched by your work, just as the sky is never stained by the clouds that pass through it. Sunita practiced with this understanding. When the thought arose, I am unworthy, he would notice it and think, this is just a thought, it is not who I am. When other monks avoided him, he would notice the pain, but not add to it with stories about what it meant. He simply practiced sitting in meditation, walking mindfully, doing his duties with care. Gradually, something shifted. The thoughts of unworthiness still arose, but they had less power. They were like old habits, patterns worn into his mind by years of conditioning, but he no longer believed them completely. And as he stopped believing them, they began to fade. One morning, Sunita was sweeping the courtyard when he suddenly stopped, the broom still in his hands. Something had opened inside him. He saw clearly, completely, that he had never been an outcast. He had been treated as an outcast, labeled as an outcast, but his true nature had never been touched by any of it. He saw that all beings, from the highest king to the lowest beggar, shared this same untouchable nature. This awareness that was never stained, never diminished, never less than whole. Tears streamed down his face, but they were tears of joy. He had spent his whole life carrying the burden of unworthiness, and now he saw that the burden had never been real. It was just a story, just a belief, and he could put it down. The Buddha, walking past, saw Sunita standing there with tears on his face and a broom in his hands. He smiled. Sunita, what have you discovered? Lord Sunita said, I have discovered that I was never what they said I was. I was never unclean. I was never unworthy. I was always just this, just awareness, just presence, just this moment. Yes, the Buddha said. And now that you know this, you can help others discover it too. You can teach from your own experience. You can show others that freedom is not reserved for the privileged few, but is available to anyone who sincerely seeks it. And Sunita did teach. Monks who had once avoided him began to seek him out, drawn by the peace they saw in him. When people from low castes came to the monastery, afraid and uncertain, Sunita would welcome them. He would tell them his story. He would say, I was a scavenger. I handled waste. Society said I was unclean. But the Buddha showed me that my true nature was never touched by any of that. And neither is yours. Sunita discovered that true freedom is not about our external circumstances, but about the state of our mind and heart. He learned that we imprison ourselves through dishonesty and believing we are defined by our conditions. Even in slavery, even in the most limited circumstances, we have the freedom to choose integrity. The Buddha taught, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. No one is more deserving of your compassion than you." The mind creates suffering through avidya, ignorance, mistaking temporary conditions for permanent identity. We believe, "I am my circumstances. I am my past. I am what others say about me." This false identification creates a prison, but awareness itself, vijnana, is never stained by circumstances, just as the sky is never stained by clouds passing through it. When we recognize our true nature as awareness, we discover a freedom that circumstances cannot touch. Perhaps we feel trapped by our circumstances, our job, our past mistakes, our financial situation, what others think of us. We believe these define who we are. But Sunita shows us that even a slave can be inwardly free, and even a king can be inwardly imprisoned. The question is not, what are my circumstances? But am I letting circumstances define my worth? As you rest tonight, notice any labels you carry: your role, your status, your past. See them as temporary conditions, like clothes you wear, not who you truly are. Beneath all labels, there is simply awareness, simply presence. That awareness was never touched by anything that happened to you. Rest in that untouchable freedom tonight. Uttara, the Patient Nun. In the city of Savatthi, there lived a nun named Uttara. She had been a monk's disciple for many years, practicing meditation, studying the dharma, living simply in the nuns' quarters near the monastery. She was known for her gentle nature, her dedication to practice, and her kindness toward all beings. Uttara had a daily routine. Each morning she would walk through the city on her alms, round accepting whatever food was offered with gratitude. She never complained about the quality or quantity. She never showed preference for one household over another. She simply walked mindfully, received what was given, and returned to the monastery to eat her single meal of the day. There was a wealthy woman in the city named Sāriputta, married to a merchant named Uttara, the same name as the nun, which would later seem like a strange twist of fate. Sāriputta was beautiful, pampered, and used to getting everything she wanted. She had servants' jewels, fine clothes, and a husband who adored her, But Sāriputta had a problem. Her husband had developed a deep respect for the nun Uttara. Every day he would invite the nun to their home, offer her food, and sit listening to her teachings. He would speak of the nun with such admiration, such reverence, that Sāriputta began to feel something dark growing inside her jealousy. "My husband speaks more highly of this nun than he speaks of me," Sāriputta thought. "He listens to her words as if they were precious jewels. He never looks at me the way he looks at her when she teaches." The jealousy grew until it became a burning rage. Sāriputta began to plot. "I will show this nun that she is not so special. I will show my husband that she is just an ordinary woman, no better than anyone else." One morning when Uttara came for alms, Sāriputta invited her inside as usual. But this time, Sāriputta had instructed her servants to heat a pot of oil until it was boiling. She had planned something terrible. Uttara entered the house with her usual calm presence. She stood quietly, her bowl held before her, waiting to receive whatever offering Sāriputta wished to give. She noticed nothing unusual. Her mind was settled in the present moment, aware, but not anxious, open, but not grasping. Sāriputta looked at the nun standing there so peacefully, and her rage intensified. How dare she be so calm, Sāriputta thought. How dare she stand in my house taking my husband's devotion looking so serene? Without warning, Sāriputta grabbed the pot of boiling oil and poured it over Uttara's head. The oil ran down Uttara's scalp, her face, her neck, burning her skin. The pain was immediate and intense, but something extraordinary happened. Uttara did not cry out. She did not curse. She did not even step back. She simply stood there, her bowl still held before her. Her face showing pain, but not anger, suffering, but not hatred. The servants screamed. They rushed forward to help, but Uttara raised her hand gently to stop them. She looked at Sāriputta, and her eyes held no malice, no desire for revenge. They held only compassion. "All right," Sister Uttara said softly, her voice steady despite the pain. "You are suffering greatly to do such a thing. What pain must you be carrying inside to pour boiling oil on another person?" Sāriputta stood frozen, the empty pot still in her hands. She had expected screaming, cursing, anger. She had expected the nun to reveal herself as just another person who would react with hatred when hurt. But instead, she saw only concern for her, the one who had caused the harm. Something broke inside Sāriputta. The rage that had felt so solid, so justified, suddenly collapsed. She saw herself clearly, a woman so consumed by jealousy that she had tried to destroy another human being. She dropped the pot and fell to her knees. "What have I done?" she whispered. "What have I done?" Uttara's legs were trembling now. The pain was overwhelming. But she spoke again, her voice growing weaker but still kind. "Sister, this pain I feel in my body, it will pass. Burns heal. Skin grows back. But the pain you have created in your own heart, the karma of this action, this is what concerns me. Please seek the Buddha's teaching. Please find a way to free yourself from this suffering." Then Uttara's strength gave out and she collapsed. The servants carried her back to the nuns' quarters. The other nuns tended to her burns, applying medicine, wrapping her wounds. The pain was severe, and for days, Uttara lay in her small room, her body burning, her skin damaged. But during those days, something remarkable happened. Uttara used the pain as her meditation object. Instead of fighting it, instead of drowning in thoughts of, "Why did this happen to me?" or "How could she do this?" Uttara simply observed the pain. She watched it arise, watched it intensify, watched it shift and change. She noticed how the mind wanted to create stories around the pain, wanted to add anger and resentment to the physical suffering. And each time those thoughts arose, she let them go. "This is just pain," she would think. "This is just sensation. It is unpleasant, but it is not personal. It is not happening to me. It is just happening. The body is experiencing burning. The mind is experiencing thoughts. Both are impermanent. Both will pass." The other nuns were amazed. They had never seen anyone bear such suffering with such equanimity. One of them asked, "Sister Uttara, how can you not be angry? How can you not hate the woman who did this to you?" Uttara smiled, though even smiling hurt. Anger would not heal my burns. Hatred would not ease my pain. It would only add mental suffering to physical suffering. Why would I do that to myself? But don't you want justice? Don't you want her to be punished? Punishment, Uttara said gently. She is already punished. She is living with the knowledge of what she has done. She is living with the karma she has created. No external punishment could be worse than that. My anger would not hurt her, it would only hurt me. News of what had happened spread through the city. People were outraged. They demanded that Sāriputta be arrested, punished, driven from the city. But Uttara sent a message through the nuns. Please let her be. She is suffering enough. What she needs is not punishment but teaching. What she needs is not revenge but compassion. Meanwhile, Sāriputta was indeed suffering. The moment she had seen Uttara's compassionate response, something had shattered in her. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Uttara's face, kept hearing those words. You are suffering greatly to do such a thing. Finally, Sāriputta went to the monastery. She prostrated herself before the Buddha and confessed everything. Lord, she wept. I have done something terrible. I have harmed a holy person out of jealousy and rage. I am the worst of people. I am beyond redemption. The Buddha listened quietly. Then he said, Sāriputta, the fact that you can see your action as terrible, this itself is the beginning of redemption. The fact that you feel remorse, this shows that your heart is not completely lost to darkness. But how can I ever make amends? How can I ever be forgiven? Forgiveness is not something you receive from others, the Buddha said. It is something you must give to yourself. But first, you must understand what caused you to act this way. Tell me, what were you feeling before you poured the oil? Sāriputta thought back. I was jealous. My husband admired Uttara so much. I felt invisible, unimportant. I felt like I was losing him. And before the jealousy, what were you feeling? Sāriputta went deeper. I was afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid of not being loved. And this fear, the Buddha said gently, where does it come from? Sāriputta sat with this question. Slowly, she began to see. The fear came from believing that her worth depended on her husband's attention, on being the most beautiful, the most admired. She had built her entire sense of self on external things, her appearance, her status, others' opinions. And when those things seemed threatened, she had lashed out. I see now, she whispered. I was trying to destroy Uttara because I felt destroyed inside. I was trying to hurt her because I was hurting. Yes, the Buddha said. This is the root of all harmful action. We are in pain, and we try to ease our pain by causing pain to others. But it never works. It only creates more suffering for others and for ourselves. Weeks later, when Uttara had healed enough to walk, Sāriputta came to see her. She prostrated herself before the nun, weeping. I am so sorry. I am so deeply sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see what I did, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to become a better person. Uttara helped Sāriputta to her feet. Sister, I forgave you the moment the oil touched my skin. How could I not forgive you? We are all struggling. We all cause harm when we are in pain. The question is not whether we make mistakes, but whether we learn from them. How can you be so kind to me? Sāriputta asked, tears streaming down her face. Because I see that you and I are not so different. Uttara said. You acted from pain and fear. I have felt pain and fear too. The only difference is that I have been fortunate enough to learn practices that help me not act from those feelings. But the feelings themselves, we all have them. You are not a monster. You are a suffering human being who made a terrible mistake. And now you have a chance to transform that mistake into wisdom. Sāriputta became a devoted student of the Dharma. She never forgot what she had done, but she learned to use that memory not as a source of endless guilt, but as a reminder of what happens when we act from unconscious pain. She became known for her compassion toward others who'd made mistakes, for her understanding that people do harmful things, not because they are evil, but because they are suffering. Uttara taught the most difficult lesson that true patience is not gritting your teeth and enduring, but meeting pain with awareness and meeting those who harm us with compassion. She showed that forgiveness is not weakness, but the highest form of strength, freeing us from the burden of hatred. The Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The mind creates a second layer of suffering through vyapada ill will. Physical pain is unavoidable. The body experiences sensations. But mental suffering is optional. We add anger, resentment, and stories of victimhood to the pain. The Buddha saw that this mental layer often causes more suffering than the original harm. When we meet pain with sati mindful awareness instead of dosa aversion, we experience the sensation without the added torture of hatred. Perhaps we've been hurt harsh words, betrayal, injustice. We hold on to anger, believing it protects us or keeps the other person accountable. But we're only burning our own hands. Uttara shows us we can protect ourselves. Set boundaries, even take action, all without accepting the poison of hatred into our hearts. We can respond with wisdom rather than react with rage. As you drift towards sleep, notice if you're carrying anger toward anyone. See it not as something to fight, but as a hot coal you're holding. What would it feel like to gently set it down? Not condoning what happened, just releasing the burden. Let your heart soften as you rest. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Mahākassapa, Alms for the Poor. In the time of the Buddha, there lived a monk named Mahākassapa. Before he became a monk, he had been born into a wealthy Brahmin family, lived in luxury, and known nothing of hardship. But something in his heart had called him to seek a deeper truth, and he had renounced everything to follow the Buddha's path. Mahākassapa was known for his strict discipline, his deep meditation, and his simple way of living. He owned only his 3 robes and his alms bowl. He slept under trees. He ate only what was given to him once a day. Among all the Buddha's disciples, he was considered the foremost in ascetic practices. But there was something else about Mahākassapa that puzzled the other monks. Every morning when he went on his alms round, he would walk past the wealthy neighborhoods, past the homes of merchants and nobles who would gladly fill his bowl with the finest foods. Instead, he would walk to the poorest part of the city, to the narrow streets where laborers lived, where widows struggled to feed their children, where the hungry barely had enough for themselves. And it was at these humble doors that Mahākassapa would stop and stand quietly waiting to receive alms. The other monks noticed this pattern. One day, a group of them approached Ānanda, the Buddha's attendant. "Brother Ānanda," They said, "Have you noticed where Mahākassapa goes for alms? He only goes to the poor. He avoids the wealthy entirely. Surely this is strange. The wealthy have more to give. Their food is better prepared. Why would he burden the poor who can barely feed themselves?" Ānanda had noticed, and he too was curious. So he went to Mahākassapa and asked gently, "Elder brother, I hope you don't mind my asking, but why do you seek alms only from the poor? Many monks go to the wealthy homes where food is abundant, but you go where people have almost nothing. Can you help me understand?" Mahākassapa smiled a soft smile that held great warmth. "Brother Ānanda, sit with me a moment. Let me tell you what I have learned." They sat together under a tree, and Mahākassapa began to speak. "When I first became a monk, I did what most monks do. I walked through all neighborhoods equally accepting food wherever it was offered. And I noticed something. When I stood at the door of a wealthy home, the people inside barely noticed the act of giving. They had so much that giving away a portion meant nothing to them. They would hand me food while thinking of other things, while talking to servants, while planning their day. The act of generosity was automatic, almost meaningless. Ānanda listened carefully, saying nothing. But then one day, Mahākassapa continued, "I found myself in the poor quarter. I stood at the door of a small house, barely more than a hut. Inside, I could see a widow and her young daughter. They had one pot of rice cooking, perhaps their only meal of the day. When the woman saw me, she didn't hesitate. She took half of what was in that pot and placed it in my bowl. Her daughter looked worried, knowing they would go hungry, but the mother's face was radiant. She was so happy to give, so honored to offer what little she had. I started to walk away. Mahākassapa said, "But I heard the woman say to her daughter, 'Today we have created merit. Today we have practiced generosity. This is a good day.' And I realized something. That woman, with almost nothing, had just experienced more joy, more genuine happiness than any wealthy person I'd received food from." Ānanda nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "So I began to go only to the poor," Mahākassapa said. "Not because I want to burden them, but because I want to give them the opportunity to practice generosity. I want to give them the chance to create merit, to experience the joy of giving, to know that even though they have little in material wealth, they have the capacity for great spiritual wealth." "But elder brother," Ānanda said, "don't you worry that you're taking food from people who need it more than you do." "I worried about that at first," Mahākassapa admitted. "So I pay attention. If I sense that a family truly cannot spare anything, I move on. But most of the time, people have something they can share. And here is what I have learned. The poor understand generosity in a way the wealthy often don't. When you have little and you give, you know the value of what you're giving. You know the sacrifice. And in that, knowing the act becomes sacred." He paused, looking out at the city. "The wealthy give from their excess. The poor give from their need. Which do you think creates more merit? Which do you think transforms the heart more deeply?" Ānanda sat quietly absorbing this teaching. Then he asked, "But doesn't the Buddha teach that we should accept alms from anyone without discrimination? Aren't we supposed to treat rich and poor equally?" "Yes," Mahākassapa said, "and I do treat them equally. I treat them as equals by recognizing that both rich and poor have the same need, the need to practice generosity, to create merit to transform their hearts through giving. But their circumstances are different. The wealthy have many opportunities to give. The poor have few. So I offer my presence to those who have fewer opportunities. Just then, the Buddha walked by. He had been listening from a distance, as he often did, aware of the conversations among his disciples. He came and sat with them. Mahākassapa speaks wisely, the Buddha said. There are monks who seek alms only from the wealthy, thinking they are being practical, not wanting to burden the poor. And there are monks who seek alms only from the poor, as Mahākassapa does. Both approaches have merit if done with the right intention. What is the right intention, Lord? Ānanda asked. The right intention is compassion, the Buddha said. Mahākassapa goes to the poor out of compassion. He sees that they need the opportunity to give, to practice generosity, to create good karma. He understands that poverty is not just about lacking material things. It's also about lacking opportunities to practice virtue. By accepting alms from the poor, he gives them something precious, the chance to be generous, to be givers, rather than only receivers. The Buddha looked at Mahākassapa with great affection. This is true respect for the poor, not to avoid them, not to pity them, but to honor them by recognizing their capacity for generosity, their dignity as human beings who have something valuable to offer. Mahākassapa bowed. Lord, I have also learned something else from the poor. They teach me about contentment. When I eat the simple rice given by a widow, I taste her sacrifice, her love, her devotion. That simple rice becomes the finest meal. It reminds me why I became a monk, not to be comfortable, but to be free. Not to have the best of everything, but to find richness in simplicity. The Buddha nodded. This is why you are foremost in ascetic practices, Mahākassapa. Not because you make yourself suffer, but because you understand that true wealth is not in possessions, but in freedom. The poor understand this better than the rich. They have to. They have learned to find joy in small things, to be grateful for little, to share, even when sharing means going without. Word of this conversation spread among the monks. Some understood immediately. Others struggled with it. One young monk said, "But if we all went only to the poor, wouldn't we overwhelm them? Wouldn't it be too much?" An older monk replied, Mahākassapa is not saying we should all do as he does. He is showing us one way of practicing compassion. Each of us must find our own way. The teaching is not about where we go for alms. The teaching is about seeing the dignity in all people, about recognizing that everyone, rich or poor, needs the opportunity to practice generosity. Years passed, and Mahākassapa continued his practice. Every morning he would walk to the poor quarters, and the people there came to know him. They would watch for him, and when they saw him coming, they would prepare whatever they could offer. Even on days when they had almost nothing, they would find something to give, and they would do it with joy. One day, a wealthy merchant saw Mahākassapa receiving alms from a poor family. The merchant was curious and followed Mahākassapa back to the monastery. "Venerable Sir," the merchant said, "I have a question. I am wealthy. I have offered food to many monks, and I give generously to the monastery. But I see you go only to the poor. Does this mean my offerings are worth less? Does this mean the Buddha values the poor more than the wealthy?" Mahākassapa looked at the merchant with kind eyes. "Friend, your offerings are valuable. The Buddha accepts them with gratitude. But tell me, when you give, what do you feel?" The merchant thought about this. "I feel satisfied. I feel like I've done my duty. I feel good about myself. And do you feel the gift costs you anything? The merchant was honest. No, I have so much that giving doesn't cost me anything. It's easy. Now imagine, Mahākassapa said, that you had only one meal and you gave half of it away. Imagine that your children were hungry and you still chose to give. How would that feel? The merchant's eyes widened. That would feel significant. That would feel like a real sacrifice. Yes, Mahākassapa said. This is what the poor experience when they give. This is the gift I try to give them, the opportunity for that significant feeling, that real sacrifice, that deep transformation of the heart. Your generosity is good and creates merit. But their generosity, small as it may be in quantity, is often greater in quality because it costs them more. The merchant stood quietly absorbing this. Then he said, I understand now. You are not rejecting the wealthy. You are honoring the poor. You are saying they have something valuable to offer even though they have little. Exactly, Mahākassapa said. Everyone needs to feel they have something to give. Everyone needs to know their gift matters. The poor are often treated as only receivers, only people who need help. But they are also givers. They are also capable of great generosity. I simply recognize this truth. The merchant bowed deeply. Thank you, Venerable Sir. You have taught me something important today. I will continue to give, but I will give differently now. I will give with more awareness, with more gratitude for the opportunity to practice generosity. Mahākassapa taught that true generosity is not measured by the size of the gift, but by the size of the sacrifice. He showed that everyone, regardless of circumstances, needs the opportunity to give, to practice compassion, to know the joy of generosity. The poor understand, giving in a way the wealthy often don't. When you have little, and you give, you know the value of what you're offering. The Buddha taught, generosity brings happiness at every stage of its expression. We experience joy in forming the intention to be generous. We experience joy in the actual act of giving something. And we experience joy in remembering the fact that we have given. The mind creates suffering through Maccariya, stinginess, and Lobha, greed. The belief in scarcity, the fear there won't be enough. Generosity, dana, is the antidote. It trains the mind in letting go, in trusting abundance, in opening the closed fist. The Buddha saw that giving transforms the giver more than the receiver. When we give from scarcity, we create merit. When we give from abundance without awareness, we miss the transformation. True dana requires both the gift and the understanding of what we're releasing. Perhaps we think we have nothing to give, not enough money, time, or resources. But Mahākassapa shows us that even the smallest gift given with a full heart is precious. A smile, a kind word, our attention, our presence. These are all gifts. Or perhaps we have much but give, without feeling it, making generosity mechanical rather than transformative. As you rest tonight, reflect, what can you give tomorrow? Not from obligation, but from joy. Not to get something back, but because giving itself opens the heart. Even the thought of giving, held gently as you fall asleep, begins to loosen the grip of holding on. May you wake with open hands. Puṇṇa, mission to the violent. There was a monk named Puṇṇa who had studied with the Buddha for many years. He was known for his deep understanding of the Dharma, his skill in teaching, and his unwavering commitment to practice. He had reached a high level of realization, and the other monks respected him greatly. One day, Puṇṇa came to the Buddha with a request. "Lord," he said, "I have learned much here in your presence. I have practiced meditation, studied the teachings, and lived in this peaceful community. But now I feel called to share what I have learned. I want to go to a distant land and teach the dharma to people who have never heard it." Where do you wish to go?" the Buddha asked. "To the Sunaparanta country, Lord." The other monks who were listening gasped. Sunaparanta was known throughout the land as a dangerous place. The people there were fierce, quick to anger, and violent. They had no patience for outsiders, no interest in spiritual teachings. Monks who had traveled through that region told stories of being threatened, chased away, even attacked. The Buddha looked at Puṇṇa carefully. "Puṇṇa, the people of Sunaparanta are rough and harsh. They are known for their violent tempers. What will you do if they abuse you with words?" Puṇṇa smiled gently. "Lord, if they abuse me with words, I will think, these people of Sunaparanta are truly kind and gentle. At least they don't strike me with their hands." "But what if they do strike you with their hands?" the Buddha asked. "Then I will think, these people are truly kind and gentle. At least they don't strike me with stones. And if they strike you with stones, I will think how kind they are. At least they don't strike me with sticks. And if they strike you with sticks, I will think how gentle they are. At least they don't strike me with weapons. And if they strike you with weapons, I will think how compassionate they are. At least they don't take my life." The Buddha paused, his eyes holding Puṇṇa's gaze. "And if they do take your life?" Puṇṇa's voice was steady and calm. "Then I will think, how fortunate I am. There are disciples of the Buddha who, weary of the body, have sought someone to end their life. But these people of Sunaparanta have freed me from this body without my even seeking it." The Buddha smiled a smile of deep recognition and approval. "Good, Puṇṇa, very good. With such patience and gentleness, you are ready to live among the people of Sunaparanta. Go, and may you establish many in the Dharma." And so, Puṇṇa set out on his journey. He walked for many days, leaving behind the peaceful monasteries, the supportive community, the safety of familiar places. He walked toward the unknown, toward a land where he might not be welcome, where his teachings might be rejected, where his very life might be in danger. When Puṇṇa arrived in Sunaparanta, he found it exactly as it had been described. The people were rough. Their speech was harsh. Their tempers were quick. They looked at him with suspicion and hostility. A wandering monk in simple robes speaking of peace and compassion to them, he seemed weak, foolish, someone to be scorned. Puṇṇa found a place at the edge of a village and sat down under a tree. He didn't try to force his teachings on anyone. He simply sat, meditated, and waited. When people passed by, he would greet them with kindness. When they ignored him or responded with rudeness, he remained calm. Days passed. The villagers grew curious about this strange monk who sat so peacefully, who never seemed disturbed by their harsh words or cold treatment. One day, a man approached him. "Wow, why are you here?" the man demanded. "What do you want from us?" "I want nothing from you," Puṇṇa said gently. "I have come to share something if you're interested in hearing it. Share what we don't need anything from wandering beggars. I have come to share a teaching about suffering and the end of suffering." The man laughed harshly. "Suffering? You want to talk to us about suffering. Look around you. We work from dawn to dusk. We struggle to feed our families. We fight with our neighbors over land and water. We know all about suffering. What could you possibly tell us that we don't already know? Puṇṇa looked at the man with compassion. You're right. You do know suffering. But do you know why you suffer? And do you know that there is a way to be free from suffering, even in the midst of difficult circumstances? Something in Puṇṇa's voice made the man pause. There was no judgment in it, no superiority, no pretense, just genuine care. What do you mean? The man asked, his tone slightly softer. Sit with me a moment, Puṇṇa said. Let me ask you something. When your neighbor takes water that you believe belongs to you, what happens inside you? I get angry, the man said. Of course I get angry. He's stealing from me. And when you're angry, how do you feel? The man thought about this. I feel hot, tense. My chest gets tight. I can't sleep. I think about it all night, planning what I'll do, what I'll say. So the neighbor takes the water once. Puṇṇa said gently, but you suffer all night and perhaps for many nights after. The action is over, but the suffering continues. Why? The man frowned. Because he wronged me. Because it's not fair. Perhaps, Puṇṇa said. But notice, the suffering is not in the action itself. The suffering is in your response to it. The suffering is in the anger that burns in your chest, in the thoughts that circle in your mind, in the tension that keeps you awake. This is what I've come to teach. Not that you shouldn't protect your water, not that you shouldn't address injustice, but that you can do these things without creating additional suffering for yourself. The man sat down despite himself. How? And so Puṇṇa began to teach. He taught about the nature of anger, how it arises, how it burns, how it creates suffering. He taught about responding to difficulty with wisdom rather than reacting with rage. He taught about the difference between protecting yourself and destroying your own peace. Word spread slowly through the village. There's a monk under the tree who speaks about suffering. Some people came out of curiosity. Others came to argue, to challenge, to prove him wrong. Puṇṇa welcomed them all with the same gentle patience. One day, a group of young men came with the intention of driving him away. They shouted insults at him, called him names, mocked his teachings. Puṇṇa sat quietly listening, his face calm. When they finished, he said, "Thank you for sharing your feelings. I can see you're angry. May I ask, what has made you so angry?" The question surprised them. They had expected him to argue back, to defend himself, to show anger in return. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in their anger. "You're making people soft," one of them said. "You're teaching them to accept injustice, to let others walk over them." "Is that what you heard in my teaching?" Puṇṇa asked. "That's not what I meant. Let me be clearer. I'm not teaching people to accept injustice. I'm teaching them not to poison themselves with hatred while they address injustice. There's a difference between strong action and angry action. A difference between protecting yourself and destroying your own peace." He looked at the young men with such genuine care that their aggression began to soften. "You're strong men," he said. "You know how to fight, how to protect your village. But tell me, when you're consumed with anger, when you're filled with rage, are you thinking clearly? Are you making wise decisions? Or are you more likely to do something you'll regret later?" One of the young men, despite himself, nodded. Sometimes I do things when I'm angry that I wish I hadn't done. Yes, Puṇṇa said. We all do. This is what I'm teaching, how to keep your strength, your ability to act your courage, but without the anger that clouds judgment and creates suffering. How to be like a warrior who fights with a clear mind, not a blind rage. The young men sat down. They stayed for hours asking questions, challenging, listening. By the time they left, something had shifted. They didn't all become believers, but they had seen something in Puṇṇa that they respected, a strength that didn't need violence, a peace that wasn't weakness. Months passed. Puṇṇa continued his work, teaching anyone who would listen, remaining patient with those who wouldn't. Slowly, gradually, the village began to change. People still argued, still had conflicts, but they began to handle them differently. They began to see that they had a choice in how they responded to difficulty. One day, the man who had first spoken to Puṇṇa came back. "Teacher," he said, "I want to thank you. My neighbor and I still disagree about the water. But now, instead of lying awake all night burning with anger, I talk to him. Sometimes we find solutions. Sometimes we don't, but I'm not suffering the way I used to. The problem is still there, but the suffering has lessened." Puṇṇa smiled. This is the path. Not to make all problems disappear, that's not possible, but to change our relationship with problems, to respond with wisdom rather than react with rage. You're practicing well. Years passed. Puṇṇa established a community of practitioners in Sunita. The violent land became known as a place where the dharma flourished. People from other regions would visit and marvel, how had this transformation happened? How had these fierce people become practitioners of peace? The answer was always the same. A monk had come who was willing to face violence with patience, who met hatred with compassion, who responded to aggression with gentleness. And in that meeting, something had shifted. The people of Sunita had seen a different way of being strong, a different kind of courage, and they had been changed by it. Puṇṇa taught the most challenging lesson, that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face danger with an open heart. He showed that compassion is not weakness, but the strongest force in the world. When we meet hostility with peace, violence with patience, we create the possibility for transformation that force never could. The Buddha taught, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone. This is an ancient law. The mind's natural response to threat is patiga, aversion, to defend, attack, or flee. But this reaction, while protecting the body, often escalates conflict and hardens hearts. The Buddha taught Metta, loving kindness, as the alternative, meeting aggression, not with counter-aggression but with unshakable peace. This doesn't mean passivity, it means responding with wisdom rather than reacting from fear. When we remain centered in compassion, we don't absorb others' violence, we transform it through our own stability. Perhaps we face hostile environments, not physical violence, but harsh words, difficult people, situations that threaten our peace. Our instinct is to defend, to fight back, to protect ourselves with walls. But Puṇṇa shows us another way. We can be strong without being violent, firm, without being harsh, protective, without closing our hearts. We can set boundaries from compassion rather than from fear. As you drift towards sleep, think of someone or something that feels threatening to your peace. Instead of rehearsing defenses or arguments, simply breathe and soften. Imagine meeting that difficulty tomorrow with Puṇṇa's centered calm, not weak, not passive, but unshakable in peace. Rest in that strength tonight. True power needs no armor. Khujjuttarā, the slave's freedom. In the city of Kosambi, there lived a woman named Khujjuttarā. Her name meant hunchback, given to her because of the way her body was formed. She had been born into slavery, and her life had been one of service from her earliest memories. She belonged to Queen Samavati, the wife of King Udana, and her daily work was to go to the market to buy flowers and perfumes for the queen. Every morning, Khujjuttarā would take the money the queen gave her and walk to the market. She would purchase what was needed, but over the years she had developed a habit. She would buy cheaper flowers than the queen requested, keep the difference for herself, and tell the queen she had paid the full price. It was a small deception, one she justified to herself. "I am a slave," she would think. "I own nothing. This little bit I keep is the only thing that's mine." No one knew about her dishonesty. The queen trusted her completely. Khujjuttarā was careful, clever, and the deception had gone on for so long that she barely thought about it anymore. It had become simply part of her routine. One morning, Khujjuttarā went to the market as usual, but on this day she noticed a crowd gathering in a nearby grove. People were sitting on the ground listening intently to someone speaking. Curious, she moved closer to see what was happening. There, seated under a tree, was the Buddha. He was teaching the Dharma to a group of lay people, his voice calm and clear, his presence radiating peace. Khujjuttarā had heard of the Buddha, everyone had, but she had never seen him or heard his teachings. She was just a slave. Such things were not for people like her. But something made her stop. Something in the Buddha's voice, in the way people listened with such attention, drew her in. She stood at the edge of the crowd and listened. The Buddha was teaching about karma, about cause and effect, about how our actions create our future. "Every action has a consequence," he said. "When we act with greed, we create suffering for ourselves and others. When we act with honesty and generosity, we create happiness and peace. We are not victims of fate. We are the creators of our own experience through the choices we make." Khujjuttarā felt something shift inside her chest. She thought about the money in her hand, the flowers she was about to buy, the lie she was about to tell. She had told herself for years that she had no choice, that her circumstances justified her dishonesty. But listening to the Buddha, she realized something: she did have a choice. She had always had a choice. The teaching continued. The Buddha spoke about the 5 precepts, guidelines for living a life of integrity. The second precept was about not taking what is not given. When we take what doesn't belong to us, the Buddha said, we create a prison for ourselves. We must always hide, always fear being discovered, always carry the weight of our deception. But when we live honestly, even if we have less, we are free. Tears began to stream down Khujjuttarā's face. She saw her whole life clearly in that moment. The years of small thefts, the constant deception, the way she had justified it all. She had thought she was being clever, but she had been creating her own prison. She had thought she was taking care of herself, but she had been harming herself. When the teaching ended, Khujjuttarā approached the Buddha. She prostrated herself before him, her body shaking with emotion. "Lord," she said, "I am a slave. I am a nobody, but I have heard your teaching, and I see what I've been doing. I have been stealing from my mistress. Not large amounts, but every day a little bit. I told myself it was justified because I am a slave and have nothing. But I see now that I was wrong. I have been creating suffering for myself. The Buddha looked at her with great tenderness. Khujjuttarā, the fact that you can see this, the fact that you can acknowledge it, this is the beginning of freedom. Not freedom from slavery, but freedom from the prison of your own actions. Tell me, what will you do now? I will confess to the queen, Khujjuttarā said. I will tell her everything. I will accept whatever punishment she gives me, but I cannot continue living with this lie. This is wisdom, the Buddha said. This is courage. Go, and may you find peace in honesty. Khujjuttarā returned to the palace, her heart pounding. She went directly to Queen Samavati and knelt before her. My lady, she said, her voice trembling, I have something to confess. For years I have been cheating you. When you gave me money for flowers, I would buy cheaper ones and keep the difference. I have stolen from you, and I am deeply sorry. The queen was silent for a long moment. Khujjuttarā waited, expecting anger, expecting punishment, perhaps even expecting to be sold to a harsher master. But when the queen finally spoke, her voice was gentle. Khujjuttarā, why are you telling me this now? What has changed? I heard the Buddha teach today, my lady. He spoke about karma, about how our actions create our future, and I realized that I have been creating a prison for myself with my dishonesty. I cannot continue this way. Queen Samavati was a wise and compassionate woman. She had been a follower of the Buddha's teachings herself. Khujjuttarā, she said, I am grateful for your honesty. The money you took, it is already gone, and I will not punish you for it. But I have a question. You heard the Buddha teach, and it changed you. Would you like to hear more of his teachings? Khujjuttarā looked up surprised. My lady, I am just a slave. Such teachings are not for people like me. The Buddha's teachings are for everyone, the queen said. From this day forward, when you go to the market, if the Buddha is teaching, I want you to stop and listen. Learn what he teaches. And when you return, share those teachings with me and the other women of the palace. And so, Khujjuttarā's life changed. Every day, when she went to the market, she would listen to the Buddha's teachings. She had an extraordinary memory. She could hear a teaching once and remember it perfectly. She would return to the palace and share everything she had learned with the queen and the palace women. But something else was changing too. The more Khujjuttarā learned, the more she practiced, the more she began to see her own mind clearly. She saw how she had lived her whole life believing she was defined by her circumstances, by her body, by her status as a slave, by what others thought of her. She had believed she was worthless because the world treated her as worthless. But the Buddha's teachings showed her something different. You are not your body, the Buddha taught. You are not your social status. You are not what others say about you. These are all temporary changing conditions. Your true nature is awareness itself. And the awareness is free, has always been free regardless of your circumstances. Khujjuttarā practiced with this understanding. When people called her hunchback, she would notice the pain but not believe the label. When she remembered she was a slave, she would recognize it as a social condition, not as her identity. Slowly, gradually, she began to experience a freedom that had nothing to do with her external circumstances. One day, after hearing a particularly profound teaching, Khujjuttarā was walking back to the palace when she suddenly stopped in the middle of the street. something had opened inside her. She saw clearly, completely, that she had never been bound. The slavery was real in the world of social convention, but her true nature had always been free. The body might be enslaved, but awareness itself could never be enslaved. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, experiencing a liberation so complete that her external circumstances seemed almost irrelevant. She was still a slave in the eyes of the world, but inside she was utterly free. When she returned to the palace, the queen noticed something different about her. "Khujjuttarā, what has happened? You look transformed." "My lady," Khujjuttarā said, "I have understood something today. I have been a slave all my life, and I thought that defined me. But I see now that slavery is just a condition of the body, a social arrangement. My true nature was never enslaved. I am free, my lady. Even though nothing in my external circumstances has changed, I am completely free." The queen bowed to her. "Khujjuttarā, you are no longer my slave. You are my teacher." Word spread about the slave woman who had become enlightened, who could remember and teach the Buddha's words perfectly, who had found freedom while still in chains. People began to come to the palace specifically to hear Khujjuttarā teach. She would share the Buddha's words, but she would also share her own experience, how she had moved from dishonesty to honesty, from believing she was defined by her circumstances to recognizing her true nature. The Buddha heard about Khujjuttarā's transformation and her teaching. He smiled and said to his monks, "Among my female lay disciples, Khujjuttarā is foremost in learning and memory. She shows that awakening is not dependent on circumstances, not dependent on status, or education, or even freedom. It depends only on sincere practice and the willingness to see clearly." Years later, when Khujjuttarā was an old woman, people would ask her, "When did you become free? Was it when the queen released you from slavery?" And Khujjuttarā would smile and say, "I became free the moment I stopped lying about the flowers. I became free when I chose honesty over comfort, truth over convenience. External freedom came later, but internal freedom that came the moment I chose to live with integrity, regardless of the consequences." Khujjuttarā discovered that true freedom is not about our external circumstances, but about the state of our mind and heart. She learned that we imprison ourselves through dishonesty, through believing we are defined by our conditions. Even in slavery, we have the freedom to choose integrity. And that choice, honesty over convenience, truth over comfort, is where liberation begins. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The mind creates bondage through musavada, dishonesty, and false identification with circumstances. When we lie, even in small ways, we create dukkha, suffering, because we must constantly maintain the deception, fear, discovery, and lose touch with our authentic self. The Buddha saw that esyala, ethical conduct, is not just morality, it's freedom. When we live with integrity, we have nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Our true nature awareness itself was never bound by circumstances, only by our belief that we are our conditions. Perhaps we justify small dishonesties because of our circumstances, a difficult boss, financial pressure, fear of judgment. We think these lies protect us, but they create invisible prisons. Or perhaps we believe our circumstances define us, our job, our past, our limitations. Khujjuttarā shows us that freedom begins the moment we choose truth regardless of consequences. and that our true nature was never touched by any circumstance. Notice if you're carrying any small dishonesty, something you haven't admitted even to yourself. Not to judge it, but to see it clearly. What would it feel like to be completely honest, completely yourself? That freedom is available right now. Rest in the truth of who you are, beneath all pretense. Sāriputta's forgiveness. In the time of the Buddha, there lived a monk named Sāriputta, who was renowned throughout the land for his wisdom. The Buddha himself had declared Sāriputta foremost among his disciples in wisdom, second only to the Buddha in understanding the Dharma. But Sāriputta was also known for something else: his extraordinary patience and gentleness. Sāriputta had not always been a monk. Before meeting the Buddha, he had been a wandering ascetic, searching for truth. When he first heard the Dharma, he understood it immediately, and within days of ordaining, he had reached deep levels of realization. His mind was sharp, his understanding profound, and his teaching ability exceptional. But what made Sāriputta truly remarkable was not his intelligence. It was his heart. Despite his great wisdom and high status among the monks, he remained humble, gentle, and patient with everyone he met. One day, Sāriputta was walking through a village on his alms round. He moved slowly, mindfully, his eyes cast downward, his presence peaceful and calm. The villagers knew him well and respected him. Many would come out of their homes to offer food to Bo to receive a brief teaching or blessing. But in this village, there also lived a young Brahmin man who harbored resentment toward the Buddhist monks. His name was not recorded in the stories, but his anger was real. He came from a traditional Brahmin family, and he believed that the Buddha's teachings were undermining the old ways, threatening the authority of the Brahmin caste. This young man had heard that Sāriputta would be passing through the village. He had heard of Sāriputta's reputation for patience and gentleness, and something in him wanted to test it. Or perhaps he simply wanted to hurt someone to express the anger that burned inside him. As Sāriputta walked peacefully down the street, the young Brahmin approached from behind. Without warning, without any provocation, he raised his hand and struck Sāriputta hard on the back with his fist. The blow was strong enough to make Sāriputta stumble forward. Pain shot through his body. The other monks walking with him gasped and moved to intervene, but Sāriputta raised his hand to stop them. He steadied himself, took a breath, and then did something extraordinary. He simply continued walking. He didn't turn around to see who had hit him. He didn't cry out in pain or anger. He didn't demand an explanation or call for justice. He just kept walking his pace, unchanged, his demeanor calm, as if nothing had happened. The young Brahmin stood there shocked. He had expected anger, retaliation, at least some reaction. But Sāriputta had simply absorbed the blow and continued on his way. The Brahmin felt something crack inside him. The solid certainty of his anger suddenly felt hollow. But Sāriputta's companion monks were not so calm. They had seen what happened, and they were outraged. "Elder brother," one of them said, catching up to Sāriputta, "that man struck you. We must report this. We must tell the village elders. He cannot be allowed to attack a monk without consequences." Sāriputta stopped and turned to face his brothers. His face showed no anger, no resentment, only gentle concern. "Brothers, why are you troubled? The man struck this body. The body felt pain. But who was harmed? You were harmed, one of the monks insisted. He attacked you without cause. Did he harm my practice? Sāriputta asked gently. Did he harm my peace? Did he harm my understanding of the dharma? Or did he only cause temporary pain to this body which is already subject to pain, aging and death? The monks fell silent, but their faces still showed distress. Sāriputta smiled softly. Brothers, if I respond to his violence with anger, if I seek revenge or punishment, then I harm myself far more than he harmed me. His blow caused pain for a moment. My anger would cause pain for much longer. But shouldn't there be justice? Another monk asked. Shouldn't he face consequences for his action? He will face consequences, Sāriputta said. The consequences are already unfolding. Did you see his face after he struck me? Did you see his confusion, his shock? He expected anger and got only peace. This is already working in his heart. Let that be enough. Meanwhile, the young Brahmin had returned to his home, but he could not rest. He kept seeing Sāriputta's calm face, kept remembering how the monk had simply continued walking. He had wanted to provoke a reaction to prove that these monks were no different from anyone else. But instead, he had seen something he couldn't understand, a peace so deep that even violence couldn't disturb it. The Brahmin's mother noticed his agitation. Son, what troubles you? He told her what he had done. As he spoke, he felt shame rising in his chest. His mother's face grew pale. Do you know who you struck? That was Sāriputta, the wisest of the Buddha's disciples. He is known throughout the land for his virtue and patience. What have you done? The weight of his action suddenly became real. He had struck a holy man, someone who had done nothing to harm him, someone who was revered by thousands. The anger that had felt so justified an hour ago now seemed like madness. I must go to him, the Brahmin said. I must apologize. He ran through the village searching for Sāriputta. He found him sitting under a tree, eating the simple meal he had collected on his alms round. The other monks sat nearby, still upset about what had happened. The Brahmin approached and fell to his knees before Sāriputta. Venerable sir, he said, his voice breaking, I have committed a terrible wrong. I struck you without cause, without reason. I was filled with anger and foolishness. Please, I beg you, forgive me. Sāriputta looked at the young man with eyes full of compassion. Friend, there is nothing to forgive. You struck this body, and the body felt pain, but I hold no anger toward you. I wish you no harm. In fact, I wish you only peace and happiness. But how can you not be angry? The Brahmin asked, tears streaming down his face. I attacked you. I hurt you. How can you look at me with such kindness? Sāriputta set down his bowl and spoke gently. Tell me, friend, if someone gives you a gift and you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to? The Brahmin thought about this. It belongs to the person who tried to give it. Yes, Sāriputta said. You offered me the gift of anger and violence, but I chose not to accept it. So that anger, that violence, it remains with you. It never became mine. Why would I be angry about a gift I never accepted? The young Brahmin sat back, stunned by this simple wisdom. He saw clearly what had happened. He had tried to give Sāriputta his anger, but Sāriputta had simply let it pass by. And so the anger had stayed with the Brahmin, burning him, not Sāriputta. But venerable sir, the Brahmin said, I still caused you physical pain. That is real. How do you bear it without resentment? The body experiences pain, Sāriputta said. This is its nature. It experiences heat and cold, hunger and fullness, pleasure and pain. These sensations come and go like waves on the ocean. But I am not the body. I am the awareness that knows the body. And that awareness is never hurt by pain, never diminished by violence, never touched by what happens to this temporary form. He paused, letting the young man absorb this. If I identified completely with this body, then yes, I would feel attacked. I would feel the need to defend, to retaliate. But I see this body as I see a clay pot, useful for a time, but ultimately fragile and temporary. If someone breaks a clay pot, do I hate them? Or do I simply observe that clay pots break, that this is their nature? The Brahmin bowed deeply. Venerable Sir, you have taught me more in these few minutes than I have learned in years. I came here full of anger, believing I was defending my tradition, my beliefs. But I see now that I was only defending my own pride, my own fear. Please, may I study with you? May I learn this dharma that creates such peace? Sāriputta smiled. You are already studying, friend. This moment right now, this is the dharma. You acted from anger. You saw the consequences, you felt remorse, and now you seek understanding. This is the path. You are already walking it. The young Brahmin became a devoted student of the Dharma. He never forgot the lesson of that day, that true strength is not in striking back, but in remaining peaceful. That true power is not in defeating others, but in not being defeated by your own anger. Years later, when people would ask Sāriputta about that incident, he would say, "That young man gave me a great gift that day. He gave me the opportunity to practice patience, to test whether my understanding was just intellectual or truly embodied. He showed me that my peace was real, not just something I believed in, but something I could live." The other monks who had witnessed the event were transformed by it as well. They had wanted to defend Sāriputta, to seek justice, to punish the attacker. But Sāriputta had shown them a different way, a way that transformed enemies into students, that turned violence into a teaching moment, that met hatred with such profound peace that the hatred dissolved. One of the monks asked Sāriputta later, "Elder brother, when he struck you, what were you thinking? What was happening in your mind?" Sāriputta thought for a moment. "I noticed the impact. I noticed the pain. I noticed the impulse to turn around to react. And then I noticed something else, a choice. I could follow the impulse, or I could simply continue walking. I chose to continue walking. Not because I was suppressing anger, but because there was no anger to suppress. There was just awareness of what was happening and a choice about how to respond." "But how did you develop such equanimity?" the monk asked. "By practicing with smaller things first," Sāriputta said. "When someone speaks harshly, can you remain peaceful? When someone criticizes you, can you listen without defending? When you're uncomfortable, can you observe the discomfort without complaining? These small practices build the strength to remain peaceful even when struck. It's not magic, it's training." Sāriputta taught the profound lesson that forgiveness is not something we do for others, but something we do for ourselves. He showed that we have the power to choose what we accept into our hearts, that we can let violence pass through us without taking root. True strength is not in striking back, but in remaining peaceful when struck. The Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The mind creates a second layer of suffering through krodha anger and upanaha resentment. Someone harms us once, but we harm ourselves repeatedly by replaying it, rehearsing revenge, holding on to hatred. The Buddha taught that anger is like accepting a gift we don't want. If we don't take it, it remains with the giver. Through upekkha, equanimity, and non-identification with the body, Sāriputta saw that the blow touched only temporary form, not his true nature. The awareness that witnesses pain is never wounded by it. Perhaps we've been hurt, betrayed, insulted, treated unjustly. We hold on to anger, believing it protects us or holds others accountable. But we're only burning our own hands. Sāriputta shows us we can protect ourselves. Set boundaries, even take action, all without accepting the poison of hatred. We can respond with wisdom rather than react with rage. Forgiveness isn't condoning harm. It's refusing to let harm continue poisoning us. Notice if you're holding any hot coals of anger. See them clearly, feel the burning. Now imagine gently setting them down. Not saying the harm was okay, just releasing the burden. What remains when you let go of resentment? Simply peace, simply breath, simply this moment free from the past. Rest there tonight. Ānanda's compassion. There was a monk named Ānanda who served as the Buddha's personal attendant for over 20 years. He was known for his devotion, his excellent memory, and his deep compassion for all beings. The Buddha loved Ānanda dearly, not just for his service, but for the purity of his heart. Ānanda had been born into a noble family, a cousin of the Buddha himself. He had grown up with privilege, with servants attending to his needs, with the respect that came from high birth. But when he became a monk, he left all of that behind. Or so he thought. One hot afternoon, Ānanda was walking alone on a dusty road. The Buddha had sent him on an errand to a nearby village, and the sun beat down mercilessly. Ānanda's throat was dry, his lips cracked. He had been walking for hours without water. As he walked, he came upon a well at the edge of a small settlement. Relief washed over him. He approached the well and saw a young woman drawing water. She was filling her clay pot, preparing to carry it home on her hip. Sister Ānanda called out gently, "I am very thirsty. Would you be kind enough to give me some water?" The young woman looked up, and when she saw Ānanda in his monk's robes, her face changed. She looked down quickly, her body tensing. "Sir," she said quietly, "I cannot give you water." Ānanda was confused. It was customary to offer water to travelers, especially to monks. "Sister, I am very thirsty. Just a small amount of water would help me greatly." The woman's voice became even quieter, almost a whisper. "Sir, I am Chandala. I am an outcast. If I give you water, I will pollute you. Please ask someone else." Ānanda's heart sank. Chandala, the lowest caste, the untouchables. These were people who handled dead bodies, who cleaned waste, who were considered so impure that their very shadow was thought to contaminate others. They lived in separate areas, used separate wells, and were forbidden from any contact with higher castes. The woman stood there, her eyes downcast, her whole body expressing the shame that society had taught her to feel about herself. She was young, perhaps 16 or 17, and Ānanda could see intelligence and kindness in her face. But she had been taught from birth that she was unclean, unworthy, someone whose very existence was a source of pollution. Ānanda felt something rise in his chest. Not disgust, not fear of pollution, but a deep sadness at the cruelty of the caste system. He thought of the Buddha's teachings of how the Buddha had said again and again that a person's worth was not determined by their birth, but by their actions, their heart, their intentions. Sister, Ānanda said gently, "What is your name?" The woman looked up surprised. No one of higher caste ever asked her name. "Prakriti, sir." "Prakriti," Ānanda repeated, speaking her name with respect as if she were a person of importance. "I am not asking you for water as a Brahmin asking a Chandala. I am asking you as one thirsty person asking another person who has access to water. I am asking you as one human being asking another. Will you help me?" Prakriti's eyes filled with tears. "But sir, I will pollute you. Your teacher, the Buddha, won't he be angry if you accept water from someone like me?" Ānanda smiled. "My teacher has taught me that there is no pollution in water drawn by any hand. Water is water, and kindness is kindness, regardless of who offers it. The Buddha would be disappointed in me if I refused water from someone willing to give it simply because of the caste they were born into." Slowly, hesitantly, Prakriti lifted her water pot. Her hands trembled as she poured water into Ānanda's cupped palms. Ānanda drank gratefully, and when he finished, he bowed to her. "Thank you, sister. You have saved me from great suffering today. Your kindness will not be forgotten." Prakriti stood there stunned. A monk had bowed to her. A person of high birth had called her sister, had thanked her, had treated her as if she were worthy of respect. Something shifted in her heart, a small crack in the wall of shame she had carried all her life. "Sir," she said, her voice stronger now, "may I ask you something?" "Of course. Your teacher, the Buddha, does. He really believed that people like me are not impure. Does he really teach that birth doesn't determine worth?" "He doesn't just teach it," Ānanda said. "He lives it. He accepts students from all castes. He eats food offered by anyone. He teaches that what makes a person pure or impure is not their birth, but their actions. A Brahmin who lies and steals is impure. A Chandala who lives with honesty and kindness is pure." Prakriti's tears flowed freely now. "All my life I have been told I am dirty, unworthy, less than human. I have believed it. I have felt shame for simply existing. But you are saying this is not true." "It is not true," Ānanda said firmly. "It has never been true. It is a lie that society tells to maintain power to keep some people up and others down. But it is a lie. Your true nature is the same as mine, the same as the Buddha's, the same as any king or queen. We are all capable of wisdom, of compassion, of awakening. Could someone like me learn the Buddha's teachings?" Prakriti asked, hardly daring to hope. "Not only could you learn them," Ānanda said, "but you might understand them more deeply than many who were born into privilege. Those who have suffered often have more compassion. Those who have been looked down upon often see more clearly the illusions of status and pride." Prakriti set down her water pot and sat on the ground, and Ānanda sat with her. There by the well, he began to teach her. He taught her about suffering and the end of suffering. He taught her about the Four Noble Truths. He taught her that her suffering was not because she was Chandala, but because she believed the story that society told about her. "You are not your caste," Ānanda said. "You are not the labels that have been placed on you. you are awareness itself, and that awareness is pure, has always been pure, regardless of what work your hands do or what family you were born into. They talked for a long time. Other Chandala people, seeing Prakriti sitting with a monk, began to gather. They were afraid at first, worried that Prakriti would be punished for speaking with someone of higher caste. But Ānanda welcomed them all, answered their questions, treated each person with the same respect he would show to royalty. When Ānanda finally continued on his journey, the Chandala community was transformed. They had met someone who saw them not as untouchables, but as human beings worthy of respect and capable of spiritual understanding. Word spread quickly through their community and beyond. When Ānanda returned to the monastery and told the Buddha what had happened, the Buddha smiled with great joy. "Ānanda, you have understood the teaching deeply. You have not just learned it with your mind, you have embodied it with your heart. This is true practice." But not everyone was pleased. Some of the monks who came from Brahmin families were uncomfortable. One of them approached Ānanda privately. "Brother, we heard that you accepted water from a Chandala woman. Is this true?" "It is true," Ānanda said calmly. "But don't you worry about pollution. Don't you worry about what people will think." Ānanda looked at his brother monk with compassion. "Tell me, friend, what is pollution? Is it in the water itself? Is it in the hand that draws the water? Or is it in the mind that believes in pollution?" The monk frowned, thinking, "I suppose it is in the mind." "Yes," Ānanda said. "Pollution is a concept, an idea, a belief. It is not real in the way that water is real, in the way that kindness is real. The Buddha has taught us to see clearly, to distinguish between what is truly real and what is merely convention, merely belief. The caste system is a convention. It is a human creation. It is not a law of nature, but it is the way things have always been," the monk protested. "Slavery has always been," Ānanda said gently. "War has always been. Cruelty has always been. Does that make them right? Does that mean we shouldn't work to change them? The Buddha came to wake us up from these old patterns, these old beliefs. He came to show us that we are all equal in our capacity for suffering and in our capacity for freedom." The monk was silent, struggling with ideas that challenged everything he had been taught since childhood. Ānanda placed a hand on his shoulder. "Brother, I understand this is difficult. You were raised to believe in the caste system just as I was. But the Dharma asks us to question everything, to see clearly, to let go of beliefs that cause suffering. The belief in caste causes immense suffering. It tells some people they are superior and others that they are worthless. Both are lies. Both create suffering." Over time, more and more monks began to follow Ānanda's example. They would accept food from anyone, teach anyone who asked, treat all people with equal respect. The Buddha's Sangha became known as a place where caste did not matter, where a person was judged by their character and practice not by their birth. Prakriti. The young Chandala woman continued to practice the teachings Ānanda had shared with her. She taught others in her community, and eventually she became known as a wise woman, someone people would come to for advice and guidance. She never became a nun. The social barriers were still too strong for that, but she lived the Dharma fully, and her life was transformed. Years later, when Ānanda was an old man, someone asked him, "Of all the teachings you learned from the Buddha, which one changed you the most?" Ānanda thought for a long moment. The teaching that all beings are equal in their fundamental nature. I grew up believing I was superior because of my birth. I didn't even realize I believed it. It was just the water I swam in, the air I breathed. But the day I asked that Chandala woman for water, I had to choose. Would I cling to the old beliefs, or would I live the Buddha's teaching? That choice changed everything. It showed me that the Dharma is not just philosophy, it is a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of treating every person we meet. Ānanda taught us that true compassion means seeing past the labels society places on people. He showed that the barriers between us of caste, class, race, status are human creations, not ultimate truths. When we see through these illusions to the human being before us, walls dissolve, and what remains is simple connection. No higher, no lower. Just beings sharing this brief life together. The Buddha taught, "In whom there is no sympathy for living beings, know him as an outcast. But one who has compassion for all living beings, know that person as a noble one." The mind creates separation through mana conceit and social conditioning, learning to see some people as us and others as them. These divisions are sankhara, mental formations, constructed beliefs we mistake for reality. The Buddha taught that all beings share the same fundamental nature, the same capacity for suffering, the same Buddha nature. When we practice karuna, compassion, we see through the illusion of separation. Compassion is not pity from above, but recognition. You are me, I am you, we are not separate. Perhaps we carry unconscious beliefs about who is worthy and who is not, dividing people by wealth, education, race, nationality. We might not have a caste system, but we have other ways of seeing some as fully human and others as somehow less. Ānanda challenges us. Can we see the person society tells us to look past? Can we recognize our shared humanity beneath all labels? Bring to mind someone you've judged or dismissed, someone different from you. Beneath their circumstances, their appearance, their status, they too seek happiness and fear suffering just like you. They too carry hopes and wounds. Feel that shared humanity. Let it soften any walls in your heart. Rest in that recognition of our fundamental sameness. And so, our journey through these stories of compassion comes to rest. You have been here present with these teachings, and that presence itself is a gift to yourself and to all beings who benefit when even one heart opens a little wider. The Buddha taught, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone. This is an ancient law. Through these stories, we have seen this law in action, how Uttara's compassion transformed her attacker, how Sāriputta's peace dissolved violence, how Ānanda's kindness broke through prejudice. Compassion is not weakness. It is the most powerful force in the world because it alone has the power to transform hearts, to break cycles of suffering, to create peace where there was only pain. As you move through your days, you will face moments that test your heart, harsh words, betrayal, injustice, pain. In those moments, remember these stories. Remember that you have a choice to meet difficulty with hardness or to meet it with compassion. Not compassion that accepts harm, but compassion that responds with wisdom, that protects without hatred, that sets boundaries without closing the heart. The practice is simply this: When your heart begins to harden, soften it. When anger arises, meet it with curiosity rather than judgment. When someone causes harm, see their suffering rather than only your own. This is the path these stories have shown us. May you rest deeply in peace tonight. May you wake with a heart a little softer, a little more open. May all beings discover the compassion that is their true nature, and may that discovery bring freedom to all. Thank you for being part of Buddhist Insight's journey. If these stories brought you peace, consider subscribing so more Buddhist wisdom can find you each week. And if you know someone whose heart might soften hearing these teachings, share this with them. The Dharma is meant to be shared passed from heart to heart, like a lamp lighting other lamps. Rest well, dear friend. The path of compassion continues tomorrow in every breath, in every choice, in every moment you remember that love is always possible.